Now, an award-winning Clare filmmaker and documentary maker is bringing audiences on an extraordinary journey beneath the waves at a brand new live show. Ken O'Sullivan has spent more than 25 years exploring the North Atlantic, capturing everything from dolphins and whales to the raw beauty of our seas. And he joins me now to talk about Stories from the Sea. Good morning, sir.
How are you, Alan?
I am very well. Glad to have you in studio. So I was just chatting with you off air. I mean, we've had you in before to talk about the various documentaries that people will have seen on our TV screens. You were good enough to sit down for an extended chat for In Profile. We did that outdoors on a lovely day in Lahinch, and I stupidly didn't wear a hat or sun cream. I just remember getting back to the station. And the next day, looking permanently embarrassed for a few days. I was red raw.
It was a gorgeous day. It was worth it.
It was worth it. It was worth it.
Day in West Clare.
And I learned a valuable lesson about the necessity of factor 50. I didn't realise though that you did live shows, and this isn't your first rodeo, as they say. You were previously out for a show in 2023. So what's brought you back?
Yeah. I did a tour in 2023, 2024. There was a bit of demand. I suppose people wanted to hear the stories behind the documentaries and some of the scenes and what goes into it. And I suppose a documentary is a very different form because you work for maybe 2 or 3 years and it's all condensed into an hour or 2 hours. Whereas the live show, you're kind of talking about a lot of that stuff. And I love it. I love doing them because there's so much interaction with the audience. You can feel the buzz from people. And as opposed to a documentary, which I suppose is a bit preconceived really in terms of what it is. So I did a tour then, and thankfully we had sold out houses all across the country. Look, it's great, and got a lot of requests from various venues. Was I coming back? Was I doing another one? So it's been a couple of years, and I'm doing a few shows this spring and then a larger tour later on in the autumn. So I'll be in Clare, which is my hometown. It's very special for me.
Oh, you got a great reception there. I just wonder about the live show. You clearly enjoy that, interaction with the audience, and I guess Q&A is a big part of that. When it comes to structuring the show, though, is it just you up there? You're having to carry the whole thing, and you've so much material, I guess, from all the documentaries and films you made to choose from. Does it kind of come a kind of almost, can't see the wood for the trees process? Like, oh God, what do I include in here? What do I leave out?
Come here, Alan. It's an absolute privilege and pleasure to stand up and talk for an hour and a half about something that you absolutely love. And if I was allowed to do it for 4 hours, I'd probably stand there and bore people. So look, it's just me. My problem is what to leave out, because I have so much material. Yeah, but look, there is it's a storytelling, and there's one thing about being a documentary filmmaker is that you're very conscious of story structure, and though it might not seem that, everything is put together in terms of an emotional arc. So I show some videos. It's just me on stage. I show some videos, talk about my own family history and what led me to becoming a filmmaker, and particularly the underwater world, and just talk about some of the experiences behind that. It's a bit of poetry, talk about the old people a lot. My father came from Fenit Island in North Kerry, and I spent my summers there, and got a great love of the shore and the seasons and fishing and that. So that's what inspired me.
Those are hugely deep connections, aren't they? That history with Fenit is 2.5 centuries old.
Yeah, my family moved with the landlord from the other side of Tralee Bay in 1750 to a beautiful stone cottage on the island, and we're there until my Uncle Jack died in the 90s. He was the last of our people. So I was kind of there was a Huckleberry Finn existence for me as a kid. I went down there probably as a child, but then I went when my uncle was home from America, my Uncle Jamie, and I went and spent about 10 days with him there, and I was just addicted. I used to cycle from Ennis when I was 15 67 miles. Yeah, because I loved it. No, I did used to race bikes.
Okay,
so
you were able for it.
I was pretty fit, but God, I thought of letting your 15-year-old kid on the road for 70 miles now. I loved it. I'd stay for a week or two just with my elderly aunts and uncles, and got lost. And the old people had a great love of the shore. I mean, we look at the Irish language, how beautiful and descriptive it is for all the creatures and the names, and jellyfish or smuggler roan, which is literally seal spit, and great love of the ocean and connection with that, which the old people had.
You've made quite a number of documentaries over the years. Have you noticed in the 20 odd plus years, not just a change in how you make documentaries, but whether the whole natural history storytelling or making natural history documentaries has changed, if at all, and if so, how?
Oh, look, it's changed. It's changed dramatically. I mean, if we look at the great David Attenborough, an absolute icon of natural history filmmaking, and BBC probably more or less invented the genre. I mean, if you go back to his first big series was 1980, I think it was Life on Earth. That scene where he's in the Congo holding the baby, is it a chimpanzee? Somebody will correct me on that now. Hugging this wild animal while the other animals were there. You wouldn't do that now. I mean, the early Cousteau films, they couldn't show them for years because they were harpooning seals underwater. So that's how our perspective on the world has changed. And look, I've always focused on conservation in the natural world, and thankfully it's become mainstream now. When I started, it wasn't. The big iconic BBCs and Nat Geos just shied away from telling the conservation stories and the damage that was happening in our natural world. So thankfully that's changed now with education and awareness. And you always have to bear in mind that now isn't the end. Go back 30 years, go back 50 years to Attenborough hugging the chimpanzees. Where will we be in 10 and 20 years' time? And hopefully that arc will keep going.
Speaking of David Attenborough, an absolute legend, you have a connection with him. I believe a piece of some of your footage, and not just that, has ended up in a documentary with him. And of course, anything that has David Attenborough's name attached to it, Blue Planet, of course, and many more documentaries that he's involved with have become famous around the globe, which means, Ken O'Sullivan, you'll be taking your shows to North America and places like that before too long.
It's a bit fanciful now, Alan, to call it a connection, but
come on, it's millions of views, 7 million views on YouTube.
I got a text from a cousin of mine, and I thought it was a wind-up saying, did you get to meet David Attenborough? I said, what? So yeah, our second last series, North Atlantic, was BBC Studios acquired the global rights, and they've done fantastically well. They've sold it in 35 countries for us, which is just brilliant. And so they took the best bits. They did something about, I think, the best underwater scenes since the advent of high definition. So it was a 90-minute documentary, and David Attenborough's there in the first scene, and the second scene is our minke whales off the coast of Kerry, and me doing a piece to camera. So I got a fright when I saw it because they hadn't told me, and so I was showing it to my daughters, and they said, did you watch the rest of it? Is there any more? I said, I don't know. So they watched it and texted me, said, there's 3 more scenes, you big idiot.
you were like, I can't even believe one scene made the cut, never mind 3. That's absolutely fantastic.
It's great. Very flattering that they put us in. And the second scene in, and I mean all of the BBC work that I've done in the last 20 years, so it's fabulous, and it's very special as an Irish person to be showing the coast of Clare and Kerry and Cork.
That is for sure. And look, I don't know if you have an agent. I'm not angling for the job, but if I was your agent, my advice to you would be leave the phone on 24/7. You never know what's going to come your way.
Get away from the phone.
You're trying to get away from it. Well,
as everybody else. But anyway, well, thank you.
So the show, how much planning goes into it? As you say, you're up there for an hour and a half talking stories from the sea. You've got footage, and there's obviously I'd imagine the Q&A is really enjoyable, because I think a big thing of what draws people to your shows and hearing you talk is you've lived out experiences they would love to have experienced themselves. So what kind of, I'm sure there's all sorts of questions you get. Have you had any weird and wonderful ones?
Look, you get great questions, and kids are the best. There's no filter, under 12, no filter, and they'll ask you the straight out question.
When are you going to stop talking?
I love it. No, I love it. And the Q&A is nearly the best part, and what I find, people hang on. Like I usually say at the end of the show, look, if there's anybody with kids or anybody that needs to get away, look, please go now. I'm not going to be offended. But usually they don't, and the Q&As quite often go on for half an hour. In terms of the show itself, look, there's huge preparation. I mean, I've done one show already in Mermaid Bray, which sold out in 2 weeks, and I'm back then in 2 weeks again. I probably spent 10 days just walking around the house, practicing and talking out loud to myself and learning off lines and thinking. And there's years of thought gone into that. So look, it's an absolute privilege. I mean, Alan, the experiences I have are just incredible. They are the distillation of years and years. I mean, how many days we go out to sea, we don't find anything. I mean, I've been waiting for conditions to go scuba diving since October, What are we now, the middle of April? So it's the distillation of a long period of time. Yeah.
Well, you're going to be quite busy on the road. So when does it all start, and when will you be hitting Glore?
So Glore, I think it's Wednesday week, 22nd. Tickets on sale now. And then I'm doing a second show in Mermaid the week after, following week 29th. And then I'll be back around the West later on in the year. Tralee, Cork, West Cork, Sligo, hopefully Galway. I've missed a few more, but yeah. So it'll all be. If you just look me up on social media, Ken O'Sullivan, it'll all be there. So delighted.
Okay, brilliant. Make sure you head along, and if you've children, bring them to Glore, especially if they're inquisitive. They fire a few questions at Ken. Check him out there. Ken O'Sullivan, always a pleasure having you in, and best of luck with the shows and the tour. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, Ellen.
There you go, friend of David Attenborough, Ken O'Sullivan, with us on Morning Focus.